All right. So as I said, today we are going to be creating bar graphs and line graphs in Excel. These are not challenging things to do, but it takes knowing where to kind of put the right things and how to move things around to make as much as you can, as easy as you can for yourself. When you are in residency or student teaching, for if anyone's doing it in the fall, one of the things that you have to do for your portfolio is put together a data set of your students for pre and post assessment for a unit that you taught to show student growth. So you will have a graph that is all of your students pre and post test to show growth, and then you will zoom in and show it's usually three individual students, one with a lot of growth, one with medium growth, one with no growth, and compare and contrast those different kiddos. All right, so for that we use a bar graph, and then more often in your teaching, if you are bringing data to whomever to show change in students kind of by day to day, maybe within a lesson for a particular subject, whatever it's going to be, you're more likely to use a line graph. And that's an easier one, a little bit less to use, so we'll do that second. All right. So we are going to start by going over how to create or make a bar graph, then we'll do line graph, and then we'll talk about kind of whatever we need to. All right. Okay. So how many of you have never used Excel before? Okay, couple. All right. So this, when you open it up, I remember when I was like 10. Yeah, that's about right. Windows 95 had just come out. I had just gotten my first computer, and I opened this up and I stared at this and I was like, what the hell do I do with this? And when I was a little bit older, I had learned basically what you do with it, and I'm being very vulnerable here. I created a baseball game based in Excel, and I just started plugging in numbers and then figuring out all the different things you can do with it. And I had spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet, and I just took off with it. And I fell in love with what Excel can do. And from an educational perspective, it's become extremely powerful. From a statistics perspective, which is a very common usage of it, it's less powerful. So there are very complex things that you can do in this, all the way up to like some basic coding things, which are fun to play with, all the way down to something really simple, like kind of what we're going to do today. Okay, so when you have all of these rows and columns that are organized, what you're basically using them to do is organize data in a way that is meaningful for either someone to look at graphically, or sorry, for someone to look at visually, or for the computer to use to turn into something like a graph. All right. So what you should be thinking about here, this grid in general, is organization. How do I organize things to make sense? At its core, this is a giant table. If you're making a table of different things, this is how you want to do it. All right. So to overemphasize that point, I'm going to make a table right now of just different categories. So we have animals, we have vehicles, we have food, we have one more category. Be creative. Someone say something. Colors, thank you. All right. Yell out 5 animals. Zebra. Horse. Garrett wins. Donkey. Someone else. Thank you. Turtle. Love it. All right. Vehicles. Great. I'm not giving any of these answers. You guys have to prove that you can categorize things. Sedan. Nice. Jeep. Tank. Limo. Awesome. Food. Pizza. Sushi. Nice. Pepperoni. Macaroni. Macaroni. Yeah, good job. Hamburger. Not so hard to spell. One more. Two T's? One T? There we go. Colors. I guess they're all boring. All right. So very simply, we have organized some things here. All right. But now what? Now what can I do with this? So let's say I am trying to, I'll give you an academic side, and then we can go from there. All right. So sometimes when you are doing like a research paper, you have to present a table of participants where you show different information about all these different participants. Okay. So I would have my header right here, and then I would have all the information down below. But this does not look very nice, right? This looks just plain, okay? So what can we do with this? All right. So in a few different clicks, you know, I'm being suspiciously quiet right now. There you go. I can make a table that is much more readable. All right. When I go to, let's see, where is it? I don't even know where it is anymore. That wasn't it. What just happened? Uh-oh. I just killed it. There we go. When I go to print, this would show up without all the junk around it. I could center it on the page. I can do lots of things with it. But from that, I have something that is more visually meaningful to whoever reads it. I don't have to put any more information, but right away you can tell exactly what this table is looking at, right? So that's at its most basic function. This is where we can start to play with Excel. Lots of easy formatting, lots of different ways to manipulate the visual aspect of the things that are on there. From a data perspective, it gets a lot more interesting and a lot more useful very, very quickly. but that idea of putting information into a table that is going to be able to be organized and used very, very easily, very, very quickly is what we actually want to be able to look at. All right. Okay. So everyone have Excel open? All right, cool. So what I want you to do is on a blank sheet, I want you to, I typically don't start information in cell A1, so the directory cross and down, so cell A1, just because I don't like working in that upper left corner. You absolutely can, but I find it to be easier to start kind of down and to the right a little bit. All right. So I'm going to start in cell B3. Again, doesn't really matter. And I'm actually going to start in C3. And I'm going to label 2 columns going down. So the first column is going to be pre-test. The second column is going to be post-test. It's a little hard to see probably. Zoom in. There we go. All right. Then in B4, I'm going to start labeling. These are going to be my kids. They have like an ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. All right. Let's say we have 20 kids, and I don't want to type 1 through 20. I'm going to type a few numbers, like I have, select those numbers, and then do you see the little box in the bottom right? Grab that until you see the little plus, and drag it all the way down to 20, and it finishes out the series. That can work for dates, that can work for patterns, that can work for lots of different things. If you're creating like basic math materials for skip counting and you want to create something that counts by 7s, you don't want to think about what that looks like all the way down. You can just grab that and make it go. Okay. So these are student numbers, basically. We could easily put in names. We can do whatever we want. All right. Then, so now we have student 1, pre-test score, post-test score. Student 9, pre-test score, post-test score. All right. So take a minute, 2 minutes, and let's say that we are working on a percentage graph. All right. So our scores can go from 0 to 100. All right. For all 20 of your students, put a random pre-test score and a random post-test score. Okay. And I'll do the same. Good. Okay. Anyone need a second more? We're good? Yep. All right, good. Okay. To make a graph of this, very simply, we are going to highlight all of the data, including, hopefully I get this right with numbers, the 1 through 20, all right, including pre-test and post-test. And then select all of the data. You're going to go to Insert. While you have the data selected, you're going to select over here where it says charts. Now, whichever version of Excel you're using, it might look a little bit different. So try and find where it matches up. There's these 3 columns or something similar. You're going to select that one. And of these options, there's clustered column, there's stacked column, and 100% stacked column. We're going to do the clustered column, all right? Just like that, you have a graph. Okay. Sound good so far? All right. There are a couple of things that happen when you have this type of graph that we want to be able to address. Number one, you may not always need a chart title. If you don't need it for whatever reason, you can just delete chart title, and that's totally fine. In some cases, especially if you're doing research and are making graphs, you don't want these sideways, the horizontal lines. So you can select the lines and delete those, and they go away. And then the big other thing, we can keep them for now. The big other thing is Excel, and I think the other programs too, have a default of going 20% above the maximum that you see in your chart, all right? So this is something that you want to be very, very aware of. The top of your chart, to the degree possible, should be the maximum achievable score. So when you're doing percentages, if you're doing something out of 100, you want this maximum to be 100. If it goes to 120, that implies that 120 was possible, all right? If you are graphing raw scores of something, maybe out of like 20, then you would want your maximum over here to be 20, even if no one got to that point. Let's say I was just graphing the pre-tests. Let me put 100 in here. We'll make that 90. So here, where I just graphed the pre-test, it goes to 100, but that's not my maximum score. That was 90. So it kind of, it worked out there. If I lower this, 50, 50, this guy's high. So you see it rescaled down to 80, even though 100 is the possible. And I want to be able to show that. So to change the scale, double click on the axis numbers out here, and you get this format box over on the right. So what we want to change here is the maximum from 120 to 100. So when you do that, it rescales. It also changed this, where it says units, the major unit, from 20 to 10. So where it counted 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120 before on the y-axis, now it's counting 0, 10, 20, so on and so forth. All right. Any questions so far? Good? Okay, cool. Every now and then, not every now and then, depending on how much you care or not, you can change the color of the bars to your heart's content. In research papers, having grayscale is very, very important. So if you go to grad school and you have to do any research papers, black and white, black and gray, black and shades of gray, stripes, those kinds of things are all preferable to different colors. And I'm sure that's for printing purposes and not having to journals print in color ink, but that's if you've heard of APA style, that's all black and white. All right. So from that, you have a bar graph, right? Pretty straightforward. Yeah. Cool. Now, what else can you do now that you have this fancy little data set over here? Where Excel gets powerful is in its ability to do formulas and be able to do different calculations very, very quickly. So let's say we wanted to take this data set here and be able to get a little bit more information out of it. All right. Maybe I want to know what the average score was on my pre-test and the post-test. We all know how to calculate average. It wouldn't be very hard with a 20 person set, but at the bottom of this, this table, I can type equals average. Now, I'm going to hit open parentheses, so Shift 9. I'm going to select all of the data in my table, or in the pretest table. I'm going to hit close parentheses, and I hit enter. I get my average. All right. Now, select that number, the little box on the bottom right. We're going to select that again and drag it over one column. I just get the average for my post-test. Okay. Now, what do I do with that? I'm going to type average, oops, down here. Select average and those two numbers. I'm going to do insert, another graph. Now I have a graph of my averages. Okay. What if I want to find out the differences between my pre-test and my post-test? Over here at the top, I am again going to hit equals, do a simple subtraction formula. So I am going to select this cell, very specifically this cell, this first post-test, the letters that come up are the cell locator. So I have selected cell D4. Whatever value is in D4 is going to be the value that I start with. Minus C4. Hit enter. So for me, the difference between 56 and 25 is 31. So that was my gain. This handy dandy little square in the bottom right. Select that, drag it down. Here's my difference for all my students. Or gain or loss. I can make a graph off of that. Now I have a graph showing how much or how little my students changed. Okay.
And all you did was subtract a cell from another cell?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, exactly. Exactly. So when you have these formulas, there are these types of things are what make Excel so dynamic. The level that you can go into with the formulas is beyond ridiculous. How you can combine different things, and it becomes really, really, really powerful this way. As an example, let's say I want to see really quickly, be able to show who did much better, who did much worse. I'm going to select all of these data. See where it says conditional formatting? Going to do highlight cell rules. Select greater than. Format cells that only contain cell value greater than, let's say, 35. And I'm going to format with. I'm going to select this green fill with dark green text. I hit OK. All my students that increased by more than 35 are now highlighted green. All right. Say I want to do the exact same thing for who did poorly. I select all those same cells, conditional formatting, cells less than 10. Now I'm going to have the red text. So some are red, some are green. All right. What's really cool about this is I'm starting to develop a template for maybe any pre-test and post-test that I use. So let's say I'm all done with this pre-test and post-test, and I want to do the exact same thing for another pre-test and post-test. Well, the gain and loss, the averages, and the graph are all based on the values that I entered in these cells. So if I delete these data, everything goes away. Don't do that yet necessarily. I enter in the data somewhat haphazardly.
So your settings really don't go away.
None of your settings go away. So you end up with this template that you can use over and over and over. You don't have to recreate anything. You can copy this, you can move it around. Let's say I want to keep all of this, but I want to make a new one. So I selected everything, I copied it. I'll go to a new page. I'll paste it, clear out the data, and I'm off and running. All right. The only thing that hasn't moved with me, oops, is my graph. So I may have to recreate that. I might be able to copy that over. There's ways that I can work with that. But then down here where it says sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, I can double click on sheet 2. And I say that's all my information for test 1. Come over here. This is all my information for test 2. So on and so on and so on and so on. Yeah.
So you can save multiple sheets within one file. So I have like one class, or like class.
First period, second period, third period, fourth period. Yep.
I have to save multiple files for one class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a worksheet, workbook that I'm working with right now that has, what's 14 times 31 plus a few extra. So whatever that is, 450-ish.
14 times 31.
Yeah.
434.
434 plus like 5 additional worksheet spreadsheets with like mass quantities of data in them. So Excel can take a lot of information. You could have all your test scores for all your tests year after year after year. You can use those to make summary sheets. You can do all sorts of really, really cool stuff with this. Let's say I wanted to, if I put these in the same spot, let's just make it simple. All right. So let's say I wanted so test 1, oops. Yeah. So you see test 1 data starts on cell C4, right? Test 2 data also starts on C4. So it's the same data point on both. So let's say I wanted a summary sheet for an individual kit. I wanted to know, let's say, the difference between the differences for student 1 from test 2 to test 1. All right, so I want to see, did they improve more on test 2 than on test 1? So I'm going to create my table, test 1. Actually, I won't even do that. I'll just do it straight away. So difference between tests. So now I'm on a third sheet all the way down. So this goes all the way to 20. Looking at the difference between the two. So I'm going to hit equals. Then I'm going to click on test 2. Click on the gain and loss cell. minus, click on test 1, the gain and loss cell, and hit enter. And I see that their difference was 56 points worse between test 1 and test 2. You know, obviously I put super weirdo data in, but that allows me to compare the data on this sheet to the data on this sheet. Yeah.
What was the first step in that process?
Yep. So
I don't have Excel in front of me.
no, that's fine. And definitely go back and watch this recording because I think it'll be helpful. So here I hit equals. And then I clicked on the tab, the first tab where I want to pull my data from. Click the first cell of that tab that I want to get. Then hit minus. Then the next tab and its cell and hit enter. And what you see here, and try and make it a little bit bigger. No, that didn't make what I wanted to be bigger. No, it's not making the bar bigger. Up here, there's lots of small things that make a difference, but what you basically see is where it says test 2, that's, and then E4. That's cell E4 on sheet test 2 minus cell E4 on sheet test 1. And you can do that across lots of different things. And it just builds to get more and more intricate from there. So again, the value in Excel is that through a really simple process, just setting my data up in this organized way, I was able to calculate averages, I was able to calculate differences, I can, here's a good one. I select all the differences. I'm going to go to where it says data. Up here. So selecting the differences, I'm going to hit sort. It's going to ask me, do I want to expand the selection or continue with the current selection? So if I hit expand the selection, what's going to happen is I'm going to, what I'm going to do is sort on this column from highest number to lowest number. By expanding the selection, it's going to bring all of this data with me and sort it as if each row was like one line that all moves together. So what you'll see is this 78, nope, this 84 will become the first row, and you will see ID number 18 up here. So they will, the whole data set will be organized based on this column. All right, so I hit expand the selection, sort by column gain and loss, values, which is what I want. I'm going to do largest to smallest. Hit OK. And now they're organized. Highest performers, lowest performers by gain and loss, and their ID numbers or their names or whatever that go along with them. Yeah.
If you wanted to do the reverse and do it again, would you have to give the number row a name, or would you just be able to like a specific cell? Like if I wanted to make it back go in order like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Gotcha. Okay, so there are a couple ways to do that. From here, I can actually just hit undo, and it will do it. However, let's say I go do 10 other things, and I want to keep those 10 other things. I could then select this row and do the same thing. oops, not filter, sort, expand. Now I want to do by column B, which I could name student IDs or name, smallest to largest, and we're back to where we were. All right. I'm not going to get into this now, but there's actually a way to make this whole thing one table like that does define things, where I could just like click the top and it would sort everything just as we just did. But there's lots of little built-ins into Excel that the whole purpose is to help you analyze data. And when you're working with lots of kids, lots of classes, different years, whatever it's going to be, or any sort of large amount of data, this becomes really, 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 really helpful. Okay. Okay. So if you were, let's say this is, and on Thursday, what we're going to talk about is how do I look at some of these data to actually organize, like know what to look at and compare and analyze and know what I want to organize. But let's say I am going to, I start here, and then I want to use these data to then make an easy graph for a high performing student, a middle performing student, and a low performing student. Okay. So maybe I want to start by organizing based on my post-test scores. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to highlight my post-test, sort, expand the selection, sort by post-test from largest to smallest, and I hit OK. You put my average in there. That's annoying, but whatever. It is what it is. All right. So let's say that I think my student who got the 100 on the post test, they're my high performing student. So what I'm going to do is select these 3 cells. So the student name, their pre-test score, and their post-test score. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to paste it down below. All right. Now, I don't care so much about the name anymore. So I'm going to replace the name with high performance. Let's say my child who increased by 30, the one yellow one here, or yellow, white, they're my middle. And my student who decreased by 20 points, they are my low performance student. I am going to then do the exact same thing. Select my data, make my stacked clustered column. So now I have pre-test. Oh, let me do this. Sorry. Pre-test, post-test. Now I have my same thing. Change the scale. So, now I have my comparison graph for my 3 students. High, middle, and low performing student. All right. Any questions about any of that? So for your teacher work sample, unless we change it in the next year, which is entirely possible, I think this will still be in it. You will need a classroom graph that shows pre-test and post-test scores, and you will need this comparison graph. So these are the two graphs that you need for your student teaching or residency portfolio. All right. Simple in Excel to get them organized. Any questions there? Helpful? Overwhelming? No?
That's
Little bit.
actually way more simple than I thought it was. I mean, I feel like whenever I do it myself, I'm gonna miss a few steps along the way.
For sure.
We'll have to look back at it.
For
but
sure. Yeah. No, like it wasn't hyperbole. The first time I opened this up, I just like looked at it for 5 minutes. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go play a video game. Like this, what is this?
I think it helps to have someone explain it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you like data, if you like working with data, I can't overemphasize enough how powerful this can be. And of the data packages or products out there, it's probably the least powerful, but the most user friendly. So there's a lot to like with this. All right, really quick. Let's say I am working with a kiddo and I'm gonna do one. Let's say I'm working with 2 kids, and I am looking at reading rates over time. And I'm going to be doing a weekly check of how many words per minute they are reading. All right. And I want to be able to see that measure over time. Okay. I'm going to come to this a new page here. Kiddo 1, Kiddo 2, and let's say we start on January 5th, 2021. Make that bigger. And I'm going to be doing this all semester long, every 7 days. Nope, that's not. I'll put my first 2 dates in. So I have 1/5, I have 1/12. I'm going to select the whole thing, drag down, get out sometime in May. There are all my dates. So now for each of these dates, let's only do like 10 data points. Put in your fake data for kid 1, kid 2. And here's what I want you to do. I want kid 1 to start around 50 words per minute, increase to about 80 words per minute. So kid 1, start at about 50 words per minute, end at about 80 words per minute over 10 weeks. Variable data. So he doesn't just go straight up. It's got to go up and down and up and down and up and down to some degree. All right. Kid 2, start at 40 words per minute, end at 100 words per minute. Variable data cross kid 1 between week 7 and 9. All right. So those are your rules for the data that you're going to enter. So we're going to start by entering the data. Then we're going to create the graph and see where we come up. Okay. Take a couple minutes and enter those data. All right. So at about 50, start at 48, 52, 55, 50, 57, 63, 61, 70, 75, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 80. 41, 48, 45, 48, 55, 60, 68, 75. Need to get higher faster, don't I? 75, 70, 88, 100. All right. So now, what I'm going to do for this is select from the blank cell in the upper left all the way down to the bottom. That's going to build my graph so that as I add new data, it automatically inputs into the graph. So I know I'm going to be doing this every week. So I'm going to set up my graph ahead of time. Insert. Now, instead of the bar graph, I'm going to select the one below. I'm going to do a line graph. And I'm going to do this first one with dots on it. So a line graph with markers. When I click this, what will happen is each kid will be one line. All right. If you don't have, you see how the dates aren't all there? If I extend this out, they'll all show up. All right. So this is able to show how two kids compare over time. You can obviously, you can add more and more and more kids to this, more and more data. The more lines you have, the more confusing or hard to read the graph is going to get. Graphs are never supposed to be complicated. They should, the purpose of the graph is to convey a lot of data in a visually meaningful way. The raw data are complicated. You don't want the graph to also be complicated. Okay. I said before that you want your y-axis to show the maximum of what's achievable, right? When we're talking about percentages. For something like reading rates, there isn't really a maximum achievable. So you want your scale to kind of be appropriate to the range that you're looking for your student. So if I was working with second graders, 120 might be an appropriate reading rate for me to get to. Maybe I want to extend this a little just so that you can kind of give in context to 150. If I was doing this for high school students, I want to really be able to emphasize that they are well below where they need to be. So maybe this is 250. And it shows they got a lot of room to go. I can make my graph bigger. I can change the scale however I want. We're off and running. Okay. So when you're talking about progress monitoring for a kid, this is the type of graph you would want to show. When it's the same behavior, the same data, showing that sort of progress, a line graph is the better style of graph to use. When you are showing a moment in time, like a pre-test and a post-test, that's where you really want to use that column graph. All right. Everyone feel a little bit more comfortable with this big, scary program? Cool. All right. So we'll leave it for there today. On Thursday, bring your computers, don't bring your computers, I don't really care. We're going to, if you want to practice this and mess around with it, we'll have that opportunity. But we are going to also, or we're going to be focusing on how to analyze some of those bar graphs in particular and what they mean, what different combinations of things mean about student growth. Okay. I said I was going to talk about the final. I'll save that for Thursday. Okay. All right, cool. Have a good one.